we can, I can chop it and makes it really, really nice, but we are recording. Yes, we are. Hi, Paige.
Hi.
Wow, look
That
at
was
you.
very enthusiastic today. I haven't even had any
Hi,
coffee.
Paige. I could start our podcast this way. Hi, Paige. Yeah. Ooh.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah,
What
that
did that
sounds
do?
sweet. Right?
Yeah.
That sounds like the
Yeah.
opposite of what we want to talk about today.
Oh, is it? Nice segue. That was beautiful, my dear. That
Thank
was
you.
beautiful. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Daring Deeply podcast. Dear, did you hear me? I couldn't even say the name of our coaching practice correctly. Darren Dipley. Darren Dipley. Maybe I've been in Nashville far too long already. I got a
We've
Southern
got a
drawl.
weird
Everybody in
dialect
Nashville
here.
now is like, what? Yeah, I love it. Yeah, to everyone here listening in Middle Tennessee or watching, all due respect, love Tennessee, love it, love it, love it, love the Nashville area. We are here. Here we are in the Daring Deeply podcast. David Lea and Paige Stuart with
Daring Deeply.
There's that velvety voice. I love to hear. How's my girl today? How you feeling?
I'm great.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely. So we're going to continue our conversation. In some ways, those of you who caught our last podcast, we opened up the conversation about the full expression of emotion and how important it is to simply be okay with expressing whatever we're feeling. And we kind of laid out a foundation, a 30,000 foot view of the importance of knowing that the emotions are part, if not our foundation of our humanity. And so often we are programmed, told by others in our lives who have had some experiences that were less than challenging, that tell us, hey, solely certain emotions are to be fully expressed, and some emotions are never to be expressed. And you and I dove into kind of some of our personal stories with certain emotions like anger and frustration and depression and those types of things that it's like nobody wants to talk about. Don't express those, but we can certainly express other emotions. And so we were talking a little bit more specifically about anger last week, and how, and you brought up this brilliant point about it's super important to understand that it's to be with it and not in it, and to know that it's to not allow that emotion to embody us, but simply to express it and do it in a way that's in healthy expression in a safe, secure container with those who we feel really safe and trustworthy with, which is super challenging, especially growing up in environments that may be challenging and not have the allowance of a healthy expression of anger. So we're going to turn the page. Turn the page. Y'all get that? Turn the page. Here we are. Yeah, you've never heard that before. Oh, I love it. Yeah. If you don't know how witty and sarcastic Paige Stuart is, you're going to find that as we continue to move through these podcasts. So one of the 1,000 reasons that I love her so dearly. So we're going to talk about pleasure today. We're going to talk about pleasure, joy, but I love the word pleasure. So we're going to kind of stick on that and put that pin in, and the emotional expression of pleasure, and how society, how even culturally, regionally, nationally, is expressed, and what is deemed okay, and what is deemed to allow us to feel the full and express the full emotion of pleasure. And I think it's something worth talking about, because I think there are unwritten rules. Again, we made the comment at the end of the podcast this last week, Paige, where we said, why don't we make up the rule book? Because you so explicitly said, who's making up these rules? Who says what we can express and what we can't, and how we express that? And it's so important, again, to have those emotions because it's deeply rooted in our humanity. Thoughts?
Yes. Wow. All well said. So when I think about pleasure initially, just as an emotion, it can be expressed for a variety of different reasons, right? It can be expressed for food, having really amazing, delicious food and experiences. It can be, of course, in like sexual, pleasurable experiences. It can be at like sporting events. It can be with friends and family and just laughter. And it can be expressed also in a variety of different ways, right? So it can be actual like yays and yes, and then it can move into nonverbal communication, right? More in like body language, more in just like other sounds that the body makes that aren't necessarily words. So I think that there is so much to dive into here and a lot to dissect and really understand more about this particular emotion. It is so powerful, and an emotion that carries one of the highest frequencies, and I'll just touch on that and we can bring that around later, highest frequencies energetically, which is in a little infusion of woo into this conversation. But the more we can vibrate at a higher level using language and activities that are emitting a frequency of a higher caliber, that's what we're attracting back to us. So it's fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I love, please bring all the woo to these conversations, because I think it's super important for folks to know, and certainly what we coach and teach at Daring Deeply is that resonance is so important to healing. And what so happens is we stay in the doldrums of our trauma, of our pain, and the pleasure has left. And what I wanted to express here is so often, and we talk about this frequently, is there is a moment or a series of moments for all of us, most often during childhood, that someone squelches our pleasure. And that sometime in childhood, right, we are that little boy, little girl, whatever gender that you identify with, expresses so much freedom of expression, of emotion and pleasure and joy and happiness and laughter, where it's so much of a free for all. Play is so important in childhood. And then there's that moment, right? Potentially, and there's probably a lot of people who can experience and who can relate to this, is there's a moment usually from someone who is struggling with their own pleasure, an adult or another child, that says, why are you acting that way? You need to calm down. You need to rope it in. You need to rein it in. That's inappropriate. You don't need to scream. You don't need to be so loud. You need to calm down. And therein lies then what happens is we lose our childlike ability to express pleasure. And even as adult, it's so odd to watch someone jump up and down, scream, yell, express, woohoo, all the things. And there's certain environments that's okay too, sometimes. So you and I discussed this last week. We attended a baseball game last week on opening day here in the United States. And we saw all kinds of pleasure being expressed. It was a winning day for the St. Louis Cardinals. Congratulations again, honey. That's Paige's team. My team is the Kansas City Royals. You can make all the jokes. That's fine. Okay. Anyway, I'm moving quickly on. So it's really super important to know that as adults, it's so critical to experience and express pleasure. And what we do so often in our practice, in our coaching, and helping people discover or rediscover pleasure in their lives. And we help people find the purpose. And so much of that purpose is grounded in pleasure and how we express that. And it could be the smallest things, like you indicated earlier, it could be a woohoo, a whistle, a yell, a guffaw, a laughter, all of the, and in response to those moments of pleasure in our lives. So often, though, we're reserved to adulting, right? It's like, oh, adults need to behave and they need to get stuff done and they need to be responsible. And the idea of play and pleasure and laughter and screaming and all the expressions of pleasure are left to the wayside. So it's super important to understand that this is an essential emotional expression in healing and growth and transformation.
Yes. So well said. And you're right. So growing up, there is that moment, that defining moment that says, water it down, water it down. Don't celebrate too much. Don't be too happy because you don't want to make these other people feel bad. Right.
Ah,
And so then this new narrative and this new story and behavior is then imprinted and embedded into our brain and our nervous system. And that kind of like puts a ceiling on us that we aren't allowed to express the emotion of pleasure at its highest potential. And when we have a cap on that or a lid on that, then we have a lid on life. And it can be very devastating, right? To not be able to express pleasure in your fullest form. Another thing that you mentioned is pleasure is the opposite of pain. So pleasure is the opposite of pain. And often there is a great deal of pain that needs to be like healed and addressed in order for that lid on the pleasure to just pop off. So then we can experience pleasure in its expansive, fully embodied way.
yeah. Yeah, so beautifully said. That just brought to mind we have an amazing client who expresses a very powerful spur of the moment laughter when something comes across her body, her nervous system, and we've experienced it several times, and it just brings me. See, I'm thinking about it right now, and if she's listening or watching, she probably knows that we're talking about her. But I think about that and her wanting to let loose, to let it come out. And she has even expressed that early in her life that was deemed as wrong. And it was to be harnessed, it was to be caged, it was to be tamed, right? Which brings to mind Glennon Doyle's groundbreaking work, by the way. If you haven't read Untamed by Glennon Doyle, I highly recommend it. Where so much of her narrative, so much of her memoir up to date is really about becoming untamed and allowing her full expression of emotion, most notably in pleasure and in her life pleasure and her partner pleasure and her love pleasure. Super important. But it's such an important understanding that it's okay to express pleasure in any way. And it just comes to mind, you and I are huge music people, right? And what is so associated with music is dance, right? And how dance for everyone is this kind of eerie, esoteric. Is it okay? Can I express? Can I dance? Is it appropriate to dance? Is it appropriate to move my body in a certain way? And I know that in my experience, and I know that you can share this too, is that particular expression of emotion, of pleasurable emotion, is frowned upon in so many different ways, especially if we think we can't dance or we've been told that we can't dance, that we have no rhythm. And yet dance, as we know, is a universal way in which to express pleasure, either to music or with the absence of music, but simply moving the body in a rhythmic, powerful, pleasurable, sometimes erotic way is a really important way to express our pleasure. And I love to dance, and I know you love to dance, even though you have, and I'd love for you to share that story if you're open to it, is you've received some negative feedback on that growing up. And so where that expression of pleasure has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Taken away, discouraged.
Discouraged. Yeah. That's a really great point, bringing up the dance. And the dance brings to mind that Garth Brooks song. Like, you can't experience the dance without the pain, right? Just like pleasure and pain kind of go hand in hand here, very contrasting experiences. And actual dancing, right? You're right. I received from a relative some feedback that I just did not know what I was doing. And I had no idea how to dance. And it was me trying to just like figure out how to do it. And still it was deemed wrong. And so that was really hard. And any time and opportunity for dance, for pleasure and expression to come out in that way, came up in life, I was like, no, I can't dance. Like that was the narrative that I took on based upon the experience that I had with that relative and that feedback that I received. It's hard. It can be very stifling. And so without that outlet to express pleasure in that way, right, it leaves me scrambling to seek other ways to express pleasure. And or it's never expressed, which is the other side of it. And I'd say that's where most people live.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that it's almost unusual to see that full expression of pleasure, almost unusual. And therefore, and let me be very kind of step back a little bit, is when expressions of emotions are stifled, right? It is an expression of the other person's pain, right? It is, as we say, hurt people. And so there is a limiting understanding that perhaps once upon a time, right, that they were stifled, right, and that the expression of emotion in so many ways is deemed inappropriate, so much, and which is the whole point and underlying overarching theme of these conversations. But when it comes to pleasure, there are certain rules that have been established. It's okay to scream. It's okay to yell obscenities or wonderfulness at a baseball game, but we certainly wouldn't do it in your home. Or maybe you do, right? Or you certainly wouldn't do it in the library or at a funeral. We've talked about this. It's like, okay, so why don't we celebrate the life of someone and be able to scream and go, oh my gosh, we love them so much at the middle of a funeral? And I know that is becoming more accepted. We have celebrations of life rather than funerals, which is, I think, is a fantastic way to look at it, is really experiencing the life of someone. Yes, the mourning and the grieving is necessary, but to really express a celebration and a pleasure of their life is a way in which we can move in that direction.
So good. And it's almost like if you do express that at home, to back up a little bit, then it's weird. It's like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? It's like, yeah, everything's fantastic. Everything's wonderful. It brings to mind, we live across the street from a college, and there's a big parking garage across the street. And almost every day, not quite every day, but almost every day, I hear this group. I think they're boys, they're young men, on their way through the parking garage to get to their car after class. And they are hooting and they are hollering and they are screaming and singing and just woohoos and just like over the moon excited. Now, the first time I heard this months ago, I wondered, what's wrong? I hope everything's okay. And then as I've heard it more consistently and I've really leaned in to listen and I've felt the joy and the pleasure that has come from them, I look forward to hearing it every day. It brings a smile to my face. It brings me joy. It brings me glee. It brings me pleasure just listening to them experience and embody their emotions and just letting it rip. And it echoes so loudly around where we live because they're doing it in a parking garage. And it's so loud and it just booms and it takes over. And I love it. I embrace it. And I'm so thrilled that they are able to embody it and express it in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. That brings to mind, and thank you so much for sharing that, brings to mind one of our key narratives at Daring Deeply. In fact, it's one of our guidelines of engagement, which is celebrate and mourn together as one. And I think so much of the pain wrapped up in the embarrassment and the shame that is with folks who stifle the pleasurable expression, right, is the inability to celebrate with someone, is to actually celebrate with them, right? And that is exactly how you were expressing just now. You were celebrating with those boys. You don't even know them. You're not in that space, but you're there and you can hear them, but you're celebrating. Like, you don't have to know what they're celebrating, but you can lean into and embody that pleasure, sharing it with them. It's such an important facet of healing and growth and transformation and maturity when we can celebrate when others are celebrating.
Even when
so
we
often
are at our lowest, or we aren't in a point in life where we can celebrate ourselves. or we feel like
exactly.
we can celebrate ourselves. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So hard to do, because often, and I will say this, so often our social narrative and social media is based on the flip side of that, is far too often those with whom we have challenges, we have disagreements, people we don't like, we want to celebrate when they are having a hard time, and we want to not celebrate with them. It's just the opposite. We feel bitterness, envy, gossip, innuendo, rumor, right? When someone else is suffering, and we want to bring celebration to that. And it sounds incredibly dark and incredibly so hurtful, and so hurtful to the soul, but it's very true, and it's very real, and something we put a lot of energy in our practice, in our coaching practice, to help people really get realigned to that understanding that celebrating when others are celebrating is a powerful way to embody pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see, you and I have done this, and I have loved the advent of the DVR, because when we're watching sporting events, which those of you out there who know us, we love sports, we love sports, we love to play sports, and we love to watch sports, is when we're watching a sporting event, I love to watch the expression of pleasurable emotion when someone hits a home run, when
Mm-hmm.
someone hits a last minute basket, when someone throws a touchdown pass in the last minute. I love to watch the background. I love to watch the fans fully express, because I know what's coming, so I can reverse that DVR and watch it over and over and over. And I get so much pleasure in watching them find that immediate pleasure. And we then are in this synergistic experience, even though I'm watching it from 100 miles away, 1,000 miles away. I'm not in that space, but I love watching that, and certainly at live events as well. But I love watching people's reactions and celebrating with them. This brought to mind just now. This goes back into our music pleasure and passion. Is I have come to really love I call him a blues artist, Chris Stapleton. He's certainly well known in the country music space and really in the pop space now. Chris Stapleton, by the way, shout out to Chris Stapleton. If you don't know who Chris Stapleton is, please go. If you love music of any type, go find Chris Stapleton. There were a series of reactions to Chris Stapleton's performance of Tennessee Whiskey. And I have seen all of these different experts in different genres of music not know who Chris Stapleton was. And to watch and to hear him sing that song, I got so much pleasure out of watching their pleasure and surprise. And it's this beautiful experience that I can have with folks. And to lean into that and find joy in that is a really, really powerful way to bring, as you were saying earlier, the resonance, the highest energy to bring forth. It's like, oh my gosh, it feels so good. It does so much good to our bodies when we experience that type of understanding of pleasure.
Mm-hmm. That series can be found on YouTube. I think you search Tennessee Whiskey reactions, and up pops a ton of different videos of, just like you said, these well-known people responding to hearing that song for the first time. And it's so interesting because he oftentimes is singing about so much pain, right? So much pain. And like, we can feel the pain that he is singing about, but like it goes hand in hand with the pleasure of experiencing the song. And oh, it's beautiful. I'm so glad you love Chris Stapleton. I love him a lot too. And brings a lot of joy to our life.
It does. Yeah. Music does. Yeah, absolutely. It also brings to mind, and this is very interesting. We work, and I have quite a bit of experience in working with folks on the intimacy level and the expression of sexual pleasure, right? And how that has been stifled. That people are unfamiliar with how to express sexual pleasure, right? During, before, after, at orgasm is like, wait, can I yell? Can I fully embody what this physically feels like? And I know both for men and women, it has always it continues to be a very challenging conversation to have is, and I know that there's a lot of shame associated with full expression in sex. To be loud, to be expression, to fully embrace that type of response, is one. What we will say here is, please do, please yell, scream, gurgle, moan, whatever you got, whatever your body. This is the true evidence that we're living in our body, that we are in touch with our body, is that we allow ourselves to relax and fully feel, express the type of pleasure in a sexual environment.
That is the release, and allowing the
Mm.
body to lead you in that experience versus you trying to lead the body and control the body and be and contort into a certain box. And I think that a lot of that stems from, right, the way that most of us probably experienced or sex growing up, right? It was, shh, this is a secret. You got to be quiet. And then it moved into, I don't have children yet, but, you know, as parents, I can only imagine and have heard that, oh, shh, the kids are asleep. We have to be quiet. And so like, there's kind of like this narrative that like, you have to be quiet or you have to silence your pleasure in those instances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And me being a parent and kind of having some of these experiences and then working with parents and that type of thing is what the feedback that has been received from children who then have grown up and did hear their parents having sex behind a closed door, felt as they moved through maturity, felt like, oh my gosh, that was such an amazing experience. Now, in the moment, it was weird and mom and dad are wrestling and they're making weird noises and ooh and ah. But in reality, what it taught them is to be in full pleasurable expression and helped guide their sexual experiences to more the expression of that pleasure. And I think if we continue, we certainly, you and I certainly in leading and coaching and what we do and help our clients to understand is that fully embodying that expression of pleasure brings nothing but more of that higher resonance, higher energy frequency to ourselves, and to what you said, attracts that with others as well. So we want to normalize, right, the expression of a pleasurable emotion. We want to make it normal to where if I see somebody running down the hall or whatever it may be with jumping and hooting and hollering, is I want to celebrate with them. I want to understand, even if I don't know what it is to make that normal, to make the celebration of someone and to lean into that. Again, celebrate with those who celebrate, right? Is to really embody and to support that celebration can bring you so much pleasure, brings them pleasure. And now we have this circular rotation of pleasure back and forth. And again, it can bring so much energetic healing to our soul and spirit.
Yes, I was just going to say, like, it is the key to vibrant, healthy aliveness, alive living, and living just on purpose and uncaged, untamed.
I love that. You just said something I want to highlight: living on purpose. Living on purpose. And that's, I think that's a fantastic way for us to bring this conversation to a closer as we say, oh, they're never finished, right? We just put a pause in our conversations. So I want to wrap up with that, but living on purpose, the expression of pleasure allows us to live on purpose. And the phrase there, purpose, is this is what we want. And this is what we do and how we work with our clients is to help them, guide them toward their purpose. And so much of that is the expression and understanding of playfulness and pleasure and understanding that the pain and the trauma of their past can be healed as the salves to those wounds, in working with understanding that those parts of them that are hurt and need the healing can find so much joy and healing in the expression of pleasure. So that's what I got to say. What do you think? What else you got?
David Lea, it sounds like we might be talking about purpose next time.
Oh, okay. Sure, let's do it. I love it.
Seems like that could be a great setup for another powerful conversation. We, coach and teach purpose and have a very powerful purpose statement exercise that we take ladies through at our 3-day in-person live retreats for women.
Mhm.
And every single time that exercise just brings tears to people's eyes, including
Absolutely.
ours.
Mhm.
And so it's a powerful topic. I feel like most people in the world are searching for purpose always and are looking to identify their gifts and their strengths and what does all this mean and why am I here and what is my assignment and who am I supposed to be and how am I supposed to do it, and finding clarity in your purpose can truly just unveil this whole new life
Beautiful.
and meaning.
Beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely. So I will leave it on that. Those of you who are listening or watching us across this big, beautiful planet of ours, if you're interested in knowing how we specifically work with our clients and serve them, support them, help them find the pleasurable expression of emotion and to find purpose in life, this is what we help them do. So alluding back to, we have 3-day ladies retreats that we certainly offer. We offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching as well, and workshops and the whole thing. But we want to certainly offer and provide that invitation to potentially see if it's a good fit for us to work together. And so if you're interested in that, you can find us all over the socials. Our website is daring-deeply.com. So come and find us, send us a message. We love to have conversations and see if it's a good fit to work together. And as always, thank you so much for watching, for listening to this podcast. I always like to say, hey, you can always dare deeply, right? You can always dare deeply. And that's how we can help you do that. So any last words, Paige, before we jump off?
Love that.
A joke?
No joke. But I do also want to extend an invitation to our couples retreats, because we offer those too. And we are able to very specifically dive into your partnership, and a lot of trouble and rub between partners comes surrounding pleasure and the expression of pleasure and sex and intimacy and all of those things. And so if this feels like something that you and your partner would like to dive into, then we do offer that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the reminder of that. Yeah. And this is for everyone. So if you are everyone who is in a committed relationship, that's what we ask. And we'll certainly jump on a call with you to see if it's a good fit. But married, long-term partnership, committed partnership, that's what we're certainly searching for to be a good fit in that particular environment. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. I think that's it. Are we done?
All we got
Okay.
for now.
Okay.
We have a lot more.
we always have a lot to say. That's very, very true. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, friends. And we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, wherever you are, and take care. Bye-bye.
See you next time.